She called me just a friend, and in that moment, the room felt like it tilted, like gravity had forgotten me. We were at her cousin's wedding, a sprawling affair, every table draped in crisp white, chandeliers sparkling like stars caught in glass. The kind of wedding where the champagne had its own Instagram filter, and everyone was smiling at everyone else as if the night had been scripted. And there I was, standing next to her, smiling, pretending that her words didn't cut through me like a knife wrapped in silk. "This is Jack, just a friend," she said, her voice smooth, practiced, warm. And for a heartbeat, I thought maybe I had misheard. Maybe my ears were playing tricks on me over the soft clink of glass and the laughter echoing through the hall. But no, I'd heard her perfectly. Just a friend. My chest tightened. My lungs seemed to shrink into my ribs. For a moment, all the music, all the chatter, all the flashing lights blurred. The world had reduced to her words. And then I noticed it. The sidelong glance she shot toward her mother, that tiny nervous chuckle like she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. It wasn't a slip. It was deliberate. I swallowed the sudden bitterness clawing at my throat. Then I smiled, the kind of calm that hides a storm, and introduced her to the table. "Meet my ex," I said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. The table froze. Conversations hung in the air like fog. Silverware paused mid-air. And then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, her mother smiled. Not a smirk, not surprise, but a small, knowing curve of her lips, like someone watching the inevitable finally unfold. And in that instant, I understood. There were layers here I hadn't seen before, secrets I hadn't guessed, truths we both had avoided. Let me back up a bit. Mia and I weren't strangers, not even close. We'd been something for nearly 3 years, on again, off again, but always circling back like two planets in a slow, inevitable orbit. We met at work, her in marketing, me in product design. I thought she was out of my league for the first 6 months, and honestly, she was. Smart, sharp, funny, magnetic. She moved through the world like she owned it, and I was just trying to keep up. When we finally became a couple, it felt like catching a shooting star bare-handed, bright, blinding, impossible. And for a while, it was everything I imagined love could be. But time has a way of revealing cracks. The little moments now seem obvious in hindsight. The subtle jabs in front of her friends, the way she introduced me depending on who was around, the careful dodges, the way our shared history seemed to shrink in public spaces. At first I told myself it was nothing. Privacy, caution, nothing personal. But at this wedding, surrounded by fairy lights and perfume, I saw the truth. She didn't just fail to recognize me as her partner. She chose not to. Later, I caught her as she excused herself to the bar. I kept my voice steady, almost casual. "Friend, huh?" She stiffened. Her jaw tightened. She didn't meet my eyes. "Jack, please, don't start," she said quietly, almost pleading. I mirrored her calm, matching it word for word. "You don't get it," she whispered, looking toward her family clustered near the dance floor. She was afraid of telling them what we really were, afraid of speaking the words aloud. And in that moment, my stomach sank. I realized we weren't just misaligned, we were in two completely different worlds. Her reality was one where I was invisible, convenient, safe, and I'd finally stopped pretending that was okay. Back at the table, the energy shifted. Not everyone noticed, but those of us who sat there did. Her uncle leaned over during the main course, muttering quietly, "Son, I don't know what that was earlier, but you deserve better than being someone's secret." I nodded once, nothing more. He patted my back like a coach acknowledging a loss he'd seen coming for weeks. Mia danced that night as if nothing had happened, twirling, laughing, holding her niece, sharing a dance with her father, but never once reaching for me, never looking my way. and I watched, heart tightening, realizing I had been a guest in my own relationship, a spectator in a story that had once been ours. And her mother's smile. I couldn't shake it. That soft, subtle curve of lips. That wasn't approval. It wasn't joy. It was a quiet acknowledgement of a pattern, a script written long before any of us walked into that hall. I left that night early. No goodbyes, no dramatic exit. Just me, the quiet hum of the Uber, and the motel 3 towns over where silence pressed down like a weight. I replayed everything in my mind. Could I have reacted differently? Maybe. But the truth needed to be said, even softly. X was my truth, and it landed like thunder under the chandeliers. Sleep didn't come. The ceiling of that motel room became my confessional. I traced every crack in the plaster, wondering how we ended up here. Not just at the wedding, but in this hollowed version of us. I remembered our ritual after every big event. Greasy food, shared fries, laughing at our own dancing. That world didn't exist anymore. I let the silence consume me. The next morning, I drove back home half expecting her to appear, to offer some explanation, maybe a tearful apology. She wasn't there. Just our old photos, frozen smiles that didn't match the reality of that night. And I saw it clearly for the first time. I had been leaning in. She had not. Clarity doesn't always hit like a flash. Sometimes it's slow, fog lifting over a landscape you thought you knew. And that's exactly what happened as I stared at that photo. Later that afternoon, a text from Mia. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for 5 minutes. My reply was short. "Me? About what?" No answer. I imagined her rereading it, trying to prepare for an easy response that wouldn't come. Eventually she did reply, confessing she panicked. Her family's expectations, her own fear, they all tangled together. She admitted it was wrong, that she had minimized me in front of everyone, that the friend label had been her attempt to navigate a world she thought wouldn't accept us. And still, even as she apologized, I realized something deeper. I had been her safety net, the one who would never leave, the one she could always count on, quietly, reliably, while she waited for someone better. I didn't respond immediately. I let it sit. The weight of that realization hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. And that's where the story pauses for a moment, hanging on the edge of a truth neither of us could fully face yet.
I realized then that love isn't always fireworks and grand gestures. It can be quiet and sometimes painfully clear. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe. Mia showed up at my door a few hours later. No makeup, hair tied back, wearing that oversized gray hoodie she used to sleep in on Thursday nights when we'd binge old movies until 2 a.m. For a moment, seeing her like that felt almost nostalgic, like a ghost of the person I had once known. "I'm sorry," she said, before I could even speak. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. I stepped aside. She walked in, pacing the living room, arms crossed as if trying to hold herself together. "My mom. She's been pushing me all night about the future, marriage, kids, timelines," she confessed. I didn't interrupt. I just watched, my own chest tight but calm. She continued. "I got nervous. I said the wrong thing." I nodded slowly. "So you introduced me as a friend. What did that mean?" She sank onto the edge of the couch, her shoulders slumping. For a moment, she looked smaller, fragile. I didn't think you'd leave. You're always the one who stays. Steady." The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because she didn't love me, but because she assumed I'd always be there. And no matter how she minimized me, humiliated me, or made me invisible, I'd remain waiting. I took a deep breath. "Used to," I said calmly. Her eyes flicked up, trying to read my expression. "Used to?" "Yes, I'm not him anymore," I said. The words felt heavy, final. She trembled, her voice barely audible. "Jack." "No, listen," I said softly. "I don't hate you. I'm not angry. I just finally see it for what it is. You needed me invisible so you could wait for someone better." Tears filled her eyes, real ones this time. But I stayed seated, letting her sit with it. There was no reaching, no grasping, just truth, quiet and unyielding. She whispered, "I know. I'm sorry." Silence stretched between us. The kind of silence that follows a building collapsing. Dust, echoes, remnants of what was once whole. Eventually, she stood. "I should go." I nodded. She hesitated at the door, lingering, a fragment of our old connection caught in her gaze. "For what it's worth, I did love you," she murmured. "I believe you," I said simply. She left. I didn't cry, not then, but in the quiet aftermath, I thought of her mother's smile at the wedding, the subtle, knowing curve that had haunted me. It wasn't joy, it was recognition of a pattern, a life repeated in silence. Days passed, no texts, no calls, and the absence wasn't the part that hurt. It was the clarity, the understanding that I had finally stopped being the back burner, the safety net, the invisible constant. I reached out to her older brother, Darren. We weren't close, but I trusted him. "Do you remember the wedding?" I asked. "Something's been bothering me." Within the hour, he called. "Man, if it's about Mia calling you a friend, I get it. That was rough." We talked for 45 minutes. Darren revealed something I couldn't have guessed. Her mother had walked this path before, loved deeply, chosen safety over passion, and carried regret like a shadow. That smile? Not approval, regret. Recognition of the same mistakes forming in her daughter's life. It stung. Not just that I wasn't enough for Mia, but that the legacy of withheld affection, silent sacrifices, and unspoken fears had shaped her choices. It gave me perspective, if not peace. 3 days later, I saw her again, by coincidence, walking different sides of the same park trail. She was with someone new, tall, confident, polished. The easy way she laughed, the angle of her body toward him, all screamed approval, acceptance, the kind she sought from her family. She didn't see me, or at least she didn't acknowledge me, but I caught it. A flicker in her eyes, fleeting, but real. Recognition. Not guilt, not apology, grief. The kind that hits when you realize you may never find someone who loves you quietly, fully, unconditionally again. I felt neither pride nor triumph, only freedom. Love isn't about drama or grand gestures. It's often about the quiet decisions, the moments when you finally stop waiting, stop hoping, stop settling for partial affection. She once called me safe. I thought it was an insult. Now I understand. I wasn't her safety net. I was the soft place she landed while waiting for someone flashier, someone her family would approve of. And when that person arrived, she didn't introduce me. Not because I didn't matter, but because I already had stopped being available. People ask if I'd ever take her back. The answer is no. Not because I don't care, but because I finally care for myself more. You don't return to the fire after you've learned to breathe again. Sometimes closure doesn't come with words. Sometimes it comes in the quiet passing of someone who once held your heart and realizing it beat stronger without them holding it hostage. And that night at the wedding, the champagne, the music, the silence after my words, her mother's subtle smile, that will always remain. Not because it made sense then, but because now I understand exactly what it meant. Love isn't about recognition from everyone else. It isn't about who sees you. It's about knowing your worth even when the world and the people closest to you fail to see it. And once you see it yourself, the rest is just background noise. I never saw Mia again after that day. Not because I wanted to erase her from memory, but because I had finally erased the version of myself that depended on her acknowledgement. And sometimes that is the truest love of all, loving yourself enough to walk away.